in 3, 2, 1.
Good evening. This is a regular meeting of the Select Board on May 24th, 2022. This meeting will conclude by 6:30 p.m. to accommodate the transition to the annual town meeting. I believe that we have an update from our health commissioner.
Oops, did I miss it in the transition? Hi.
Hi.
Good evening.
Good evening.
So thank you for having me. I just wanted to update the board on our COVID numbers. And unfortunately, we've definitely seen an increase in our numbers and a rise in hospitalizations in the area, which led us to take action last Friday to require masks in town-owned buildings where and when people gather. This followed our ACPH meeting on Wednesday, where members of Panel 4 were there as part of the discussion. And the discussion was really unanimous across the board to require masks after looking at the data and the trends. If I could share my screen here, I just want to take a quick moment. I know we don't have much time, where it's a quick meeting.
All set.
Thank you. I just wanted to share some updates that we have in regard to the website and how we're looking at the data. So on the main page, we have a link right to the COVID Hub, which takes us to this page, which is our new page where we've really tried to centralize all COVID related information for the public, including this widget over here, which we're gonna look at in just a second. But if you click on these two tabs, the big showcase here is our new data dashboard, which I'm really excited to quickly show you here. Of course, you know, hope people take time to really look at it because I want to thank the team that put this together. EJ and Hang On.
We can't answer your call.
Really worked hard to put this on, and they did just an amazing job. So really quickly, again, this is our COVID case count and the trend. You can definitely see the Omicron wave here. And then I really like this little indicator because it gives you a quick snapshot week to week. And this is actually the second week in a row we've seen a small decline in our case counts. This is PCR testing, which we know is a major undercount with so many people doing at-home testing. So this really captures the information we get from our MAVA database, which is all PCR testing. Then if you go back to the page, you can click on the tests and vaccinations. That brings you to our second dashboard.
Sigal, if I have a question, do you want me to wait or ask it now?
I'm all right, jump right in.
You're basing that on PCR testing. Would it be, has it been considered to look at wastewater data instead or to complement with wastewater data?
Yes, we definitely consider wastewater data, and sort of back here, we put links to all the outside indicators that we're looking at, such as the DPH dashboard, the wastewater links right here, also looking at the CDC and WHO.
I see, but we don't get it just for Brookline.
No, we don't have it just for Brookline,
Got it.
just the MWRA wastewater.
Got it, thank you.
Sure. And then again, this is our testing rate and our vaccination rate over here, which we, especially in our high-risk populations, thinking about older populations, really great vaccination rate. Oops, sorry, it's reloading. Down here is our booster rate, which we definitely have some work to do with getting everybody to get their boosters. Right now, this is capturing any booster. We rely on the state database. So it doesn't really differentiate between 1 and 2 boosters. And we know that being up to date on your vaccine has gotten more and more complicated as additional boosters come online, including now 5 to 11-year-olds who are eligible for boosters. So definitely go out, and we do have a clinic on the 31st, which is right here on our website, where you can find all the information. Back over here. So just to go back again on the home page, because I think one really big indicator that we're looking at is the CDC Risk Category. And very quickly, you can find it right on our page. And then it is by county. We do, because of where we are geographically located, we do look at all 3 counties, but I'll do Norfolk. And then right here, it gives you a quick snapshot of the recommendations from CDC. So to Miriam's point, this is one indicator that we look at. But I think looking at this can really, I want to be able to give families and the public an idea of what we're looking at to make these policy decisions. And we should be really increasing our strategies, such as masking as the case counts go down, and then hopefully we can relax it. I mean, excuse me, as the case counts go up, hopefully we can relax it as case counts come down. And, we've definitely seen, I like this analogy that actually John in our office had, sort of like watching the weather report, and that we watch the weather report and we, dress appropriately to protect ourselves from weather, whether it's going to be cold or rainy, and that we want to get to a point where the analogy works with COVID, where if case counts go up, we might throw on the mask, maybe, avoiding large gatherings, things like that. And as case counts come down, we can relax a little. So trying to get to that point where we can sort of normalize that. And the role for the department on that is really sharing that information with the public to let us know where we are with those case counts. And I think the CDC metrics is a really easy way to capture that. But like Miriam said, we're looking at wastewater, we're looking at hospitalization rates, both Boston and statewide. And we're looking, of course, at Brookline specific data too. So with that, I know that was really quick, but I just want to give everybody a taste of the dashboard, but I'll definitely welcome any questions.
Great. If any of the other select board members have any questions, otherwise I will call on Miriam.
Mine's not an actual question. I just want to say how I love what you've done. I love seeing all the data in really digestible, accessible graphs and terms. So thank you very much.
And it may have sounded or felt quick, but believe me, it was just the right amount of information. John.
Yeah, I want to echo what Miriam just said. Boy, have I been hankering for there to be something like this on Brookline's website for a long time, and it is great to see it rolled out. It's also great to see some changes gradually taking place in the homepage of the town website and other pages. I think good things are on their way. That's all to the good. This is a little bit awkward for me, I have to admit, but we face this perception problem, I think, when we meet at 5 o'clock and then people view the tape later or whatever, weren't they aware? Unfortunately, there's been another breaking news story of a school shooting. And I don't want anything that we say during this meeting to be viewed as somehow clueless or, inappropriate on what is going to be, I think, another couple of days and more of some very deep soul searching all across this country. I'll just give out a couple of details. People can go to their news sources and get the latest. It's very, very sad. 14 students, 1 teacher killed in a Texas elementary school shooting, according to the governor. I said some things like a week ago or 2 weeks ago about a different shooting that occurred in Buffalo. And I won't say anything now because obviously we need to get a lot of information, but boy, do we need to stay focused on the continuing presence of this very, very tragic trend in America. It's either because of, people can come up with a million different explanations, something to do with our culture, something to do with our gun laws, and many other explanations. But whatever is the guidelines of our searching for answers, we just have to keep searching for answers. Thank you.
Thank you, Sigal, for your update. I assume that we have now moved into regular updates and announcements. Does anybody on the select board have anything else that they would like to share? Mike and then Miriam.
Thanks, Heather. I want to raise one thing. It's just to sort of put on people's radar, which is that one thing I think we ought to be doing as a select board is sitting down together and talking about the priorities that we feel the town has as a whole. Priorities are what should really inform the way we put a budget together. And for many years, looking at the school department budget, I've been struck, whatever else may be in that budget, I've been struck by the fact that right at the beginning the school committee sets out its goals and ties its budget to those goals. And I would love to see that happen with the town operating budget. And the necessary first step is to work out goals. And I know the school committee spends a fair amount of time on that. So I wanted to raise that just to put it in your minds. And it's obviously something we can't do until after town meeting. And I believe that we would want to have some outside facilitation. But just be thinking about that. Thank you.
Miriam?
I don't want to sound tone deaf, but because I'm just shocked again by what John has just told us, but I do want to let people know that the ARPA Review Committee will be meeting again this Friday at 2:00. And we're going to be talking about the non-competitive slate, which is the proposals that we'll be sending to the select board we're not going through the larger committee. And again, we still want to be transparent about that. So if you'd like to hear what those are going to be, please join us. And we'll also be talking about the process for phase 1 funding. And we would love feedback from the public. We ourselves will be talking about what worked and didn't work on phase 1. And we would love feedback from the public as well before we craft the next round of proposal acceptances. Thank you.
Thank you. Bernard? You'll have to unmute.
Thanks to John for letting us know about this tragedy in Texas. It's just nothing we can say because we said it all before. And, you know, I like John, don't have the answer, but we've got to continue, you know, really advocating for those small things that can make a difference and continue to think about, you know, how do we address this, not just in Brookline, but what type of message is needed for, you know, our country outside of sort of the bubble we live in here in Brookline. The other thing I wanted to mention is that for a long time we've been doing goals and objectives, and we did it this year, which is basically basically what Mike is suggesting that we do. Now, you know, we've tried to tie that into at least the select board's work on the budget. And, you know, maybe we need to just revisit that and make sure that, you know, that process has a little more oomph to it. Because, you know, we really tried to think deeply as to, you know, what was important to us, and, you know, how those things, you know, relate to the budget as well as other things in town. So I would suggest that you put that on the futures list, Devin, I guess.
Okay. I mean, more discussion to come, obviously. I think this is something that we are aiming to do on a more regular basis and not just once a year. Although I think we're going to play around with the idea of a retreat, or I forget what the school committee calls it when they kind of, a workshop, to talk about how we really do stay on top of this and don't wait until, you know, either the end of the year or when the budget is already prepared by Mel and his staff. So more to come. I've asked I've asked Mike Salmon to try to figure out what that would look like this summer, and we will get everybody's availability. Okay. Any other updates or announcements before we go into public comment? Seeing none, John, do you want to take over public comment?
Happy to do so. Excuse me. Thank you to the public for joining us for public comment. This is an opportunity for us to hear your perspective on the issues in Brookline that matter to you. There's a few rules. Each person speaking is limited to 3 minutes. You don't need to use the entire time, but you may if you like. Please refrain from personal attacks and from addressing personnel issues during your comments. Members of the public sometimes raise questions during public comment. We may be able to provide a quick answer to a question, but are more likely to work with staff to get a more thorough answer and to respond over email. We will let you know when you have 30 seconds remaining and when your time is up. And please conclude your remarks at that time. If you have more to say, you are welcome to send an email to board members expressing your thoughts in greater detail. So Devin, anybody out there?
At this time, there are 9 attendees and no one has used the hand raise or Q&A feature to indicate they'd like to make a comment.
In that case, I guess we're going back to the rest of the agenda.
Great. Oh, we have a special guest.
Mary was being photobombed.
Okay, so the meeting minutes are usually the thing that we take up first in the miscellaneous. The meeting minutes were from May 17th, 2022. I understand, I think Bernard, did you have some corrections or edits?
Well, no, I wanted to add the statement that I made on behalf of Warren Goodman, and I just did not have a chance to get that to Kate, so I apologize for that, but I would like to add that into the minutes, and I'll get it to her next day or two.
Great, and that's a more accurate account
Well, yeah.
of what happened, because it's the actual statement that you made. Okay, any questions or thoughts on that? I will then move the meeting minutes as amended from May 17th, 2022. All those in favor? Bernard?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Miriam?
I, and that was my sister, everybody, and then my daughter. It's all family fare for the select board meeting tonight.
Oh, I didn't see your sister, so I just thought that you were calling your daughter your sister, but okay.
No, she'll come back.
Okay. Mike?
Aye.
Okay, excellent. So the meeting minutes have been approved.
And you voting aye too, Heather?
Oh, yes. Thank you, Bernard. And the chair votes aye. Now it's official. Sorry, my brain is still focused on my budget remarks. I have been drafting and redrafting like all afternoon. Okay. So I will move the rest of the miscellaneous agenda, which is moving an approval of a temporary wine and malt beverage non-sales license to the Lars Anderson Auto Museum to be held on June 1st, 2022 for a corporate dinner from 6 p.m. to 9 p.m. at 15 Newton Street. 100 people are expected to attend. Approving a temporary all alcohol beverage non-sales license to United States Golf Association to be held June 6th through June 10th, 2022 for the U.S. Open from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. at 191 Clyde Street, aka the Country Club. Oh, and those are the only 2 items on the rest of the miscellaneous. So all those in favor of those, if there are no questions, please say aye. Bernard?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Miriam?
Aye.
Mike?
Aye.
And the chair votes aye. Now we are moving into the calendar, and I believe we have 2 interviews tonight. Ross Krinsky is interested in serving on the Human Resources Board. John?
Yeah, thank you, Heather. And I just would hope for just less than a minute here. I did get a little rattled by the news that was breaking as we were doing our announcements, and I left out an announcement I very much wanted to make, which is to just let people, point people in the direction of the Veteran Services page on the Brookline website, the town website, where they will find information about Brookline's Memorial Day observances, which are coming up on Monday. And Monday, May 30th, as I say, just go to the Veteran Services page on the Brookline Town website. It's always a very, very fitting set of ceremonies at more than one location in Brookline to pay honor to those who gave their lives in service to their country. So thank you to Bill McGroarty for setting that up, as always. And I hope a lot of people, I hope we'll have good weather, and I hope a lot of people can attend.
Excellent. Thank you for that announcement, John. Bernard?
Yeah, thank you, John, for bringing that up. That is a very important event in the town. I'd like to just, and unfortunately, I'm going to be out of town, so I'll have to miss it. But I want to urge select board members to attend, because people really notice when select board members attend events like this, and they really, really appreciate it. I hear about the select board and the town administrator and others being at the Memorial Day, as well as the Veterans Day events that we have. And I mean, you just can't imagine how much people do appreciate our attendance there. So that's it.
Excellent. So back to our interview. I see Ross Krinsky has joined us. If you feel comfortable, you can activate your video. Good evening.
Hi, good evening. Or
Welcome.
afternoon.
Yes.
Thank you.
So what we usually do is allow you to do up to 2 minutes of just a spiel about who you are, why
Okay.
you're interested in this, and why we
Mhm.
should appoint you, and then
Okay.
I'll open it up to questions from the select board.
Great. So my name is Ross Krinsky. I've lived in Brookline second time around. I lived here for a while before kids, and then I got a job in the suburbs and had kids. So raised my kids in Southborough and moved back to Brookline about 5 years ago. And love the town. This is everyone talks about retiring to Florida, or I talked about retiring to Brookline. So I'm recently retired. So I have some free time. I was a pension consultant in my working life. I worked for Fidelity Investments for 25 years, running the retirement consulting practice there. So consulted to large corporations around mostly their pension and 401k plans, but it also have a fair amount of familiarity with health and welfare and other insurance. So as I try to figure out how to be useful in my retired years, I figured I would at least start by leveraging some of my skills and get involved in local affairs and local government. So I don't really have any notion of what Brookline's needs are on the HR committee, or what exactly would be involved. So I'm very open to taking on really any role. Again, I'm just trying to get involved and be useful and learn as I go to the extent I need to. So so that's really it, I guess. I can open it up for any questions or maybe a description of again, I don't even really know what it would mean to be on the Human Resources Committee and what the needs are. It was more just going to the website and seeing that it was open for people to volunteer. So I figured I would look into it. So that's really it.
Great. Well, thank you so much. Any questions from select board members? I usually ask a question. How did you find out about this opportunity?
I think I either got an email, one of the blast emails from the town, or I went to the website to look about how I can get involved. I can't remember exactly.
Excellent. Bernard.
Yeah, not a question, but I just suggest that you talk to our human resources director and get a sense of what this HR board does,
Mhm.
and maybe even send us a memo explaining how your specific background and experience relates to that.
Yeah, that's great. I'm assuming, does Brookline have a public pension plan?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
And we will be fully funded, hopefully by 2030.
Nice.
Yeah.
So that was one of the things I did. I was a pension actuary by training, so I'm not super familiar with public funds, public pension plans. I know the rules are different, but obviously the fundamentals are the same. But yeah, I would, if you can give me the name of the person who runs the HR committee or the function, yeah, to really just see, you know, what needs there are out there, if there's anything that needs to be done. So
Yeah, okay. I assume Devin or Mel can do that.
I just asked Devin to in the
Okay.
chat.
Okay.
John.
Thank you, Ross, very much for applying for this. Every time we have one of these appointments to make it, I find myself getting an education in things about the town that I didn't know, and I think I know a lot about the town. So I didn't know that this board actually has public positions on it. For some reason, I always thought it was kind of an internal working group that dealt with human resources issues within town hall. So sounds like from your application, it must have public positions on it, and that's great. And it sounds like you have great qualifications. And so hopefully this will be the beginning of a beautiful relationship. Thank you. Thank you very much for applying for this position.
Yep. Even though I don't really know what the position is, but it's a good start.
But you can find out.
Yeah, there's kind of a cursory description of it on the Human Resources Board page on the town website.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Well, thank you very much for your interest, and hopefully we will provide you with Anne's email address. She is
Great.
the director of our Human Resources Department. So check it out, and then feel free to reach back out to us to say whether or not you're still interested.
Perfect. Sounds like a plan.
Okay.
All righty.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Okay. Moving along to the second interview of the evening for an opening on the Cannabis Mitigation Advisory Board. I believe we are going to be speaking to Karen Golding.
Hello.
Good evening.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for your interest. So you'll have up to 2 minutes to kind of give us your pitch of who you are, why you're interested, why we should appoint you, and then I'll open it up to questions from the select board.
Thank you, Heather. My name is Karen Golding. I live at 125 Park Street, which is between Beacon and Marion. I'm part of the newly created Precinct 17. And I moved here about 10 years ago from Somerville with my family. I've been a high schooler who's graduating this Friday, not at VHS, but at a school that's out of state, and live here with my husband and my dog. And I've been interested in getting more involved in town government. And, I felt that this would be a good way, just like Ross mentioned, to get involved, and more importantly, get involved in something that's in my neighborhood. I think that's really the piece that spoke to me. To beat Heather to the punch here about your question, I was referred by John Davis, who lives in my building. He's a longtime town meeting member. He has been encouraging me to run for town meeting for a long time, but I thought that was a little bit more than I was willing to take on at this point in my life. But I think, dipping my toe into serving the town with this Cannabis Mitigation Advisory Council would be a good first step.
Great. Any questions for Karen? Miriam?
Hi, thank you, Karen. So I've just handed over the reins to Mike Salmon, but for a year I was the select board person in charge of the Cannabis Mitigation Committee. And I'm just wondering if you've had the opportunity to look up what we do on the committee, what the work is. Are you familiar with it? And what do you think of it?
I looked at it briefly. I apologize that I didn't really get to dig in. It looks like it's working with the fund and all the different participants around how to use the funds that are part of this mitigation fund that the cannabis establishments have, and how to use it within the different communities that they're located in. That's
part of it, and some of that money. So some of that money is really like earmarked. So part
Oh,
of
I
what
see.
we do is we hope you liaise with your community so
Oh,
you
yeah.
can bring any issues and problems, good and bad, that are happening to the cannabis mitigation committee, because we have people from the public health there. We have a police representative from the police department. So part of that is making sure you're getting out into the community and hearing about people's concerns and or positive experiences. And then part of it is also working on the spending of how some of those cannabis mitigation funds get spent. But that is going to change because some of those funds are going to go away. So.
Oh. Okay, that's fine. I think as far as liaisoning with the community, I think I mentioned I have a dog, so I am out and about.
I got a few of those, so I get it.
So it's amazing how many people you meet at the dog parks, the various dog parks around town. So, and although my son went to, and the other piece is having children in town, at least for me, because I have a job, so most of my day is filled up, but I'm still working. But as far as my son, he played, he did go to school through middle school in town. We have friends in town through him. He played summer baseball with the Brookline travel team. So I still have a connection with families that way too. So if it's about knowing people in town and talking and, communicating with people, I do it at various levels. Absolutely.
Right. Mike.
Actually, Miriam covered the things that I was interested in, except for one thing, Karen. Karen, you might take, I don't know if you've had a chance to take a look at it, but the committee's charge, what the committee is responsible for, is on the committee's website page. And I think it's important to know what that charge is, because it not only tells you what you're supposed to do, but what the committee's supposed to do, but also what the committee isn't supposed to do, which is to get well beyond that, the boundaries of that charge. So take a look at that and make sure that you're comfortable that, okay, I'd really like to do that. It is, I think, as we get more used to having cannabis stores, basically, available, some of the community concerns will resolve. People get used to the changes that having a new sort of retailer in town make, but there will always be some heightened interest in cannabis, just as there is in alcoholic beverages, and so there's a tiny bit of hot seat on that committee, not a huge amount, but I think that you have to be aware of that as well.
No, I understand, and I appreciate that. I did, when Sanctuaries, which is the one that's closest to us, in my precinct, was looking at Beacon Street as a location. I did go to meetings to learn more about it.
Okay.
And because it was so new, there were concerns, and I listened. I wasn't in a position to listen and understand. I will say I go past it numerous times a day, and they seem to be running fairly smoothly, but I would be interested to hear what other people have to say about it, and ways that we could make sure that they continue to integrate nicely into the neighborhood.
Right. I live in Coolidge Corner as well. I agree. I think it from the outside, at least, it looks like it's a low impact on the neighborhood.
I agree. I was pleasantly surprised, actually.
So the three main topics that come up with marijuana is usually traffic and crowd control, litter, and smell.
Yeah, I could absolutely see that. And when Sanctuary was looking to open, Netta was having issues, and I think I remember that all of that being discussed and being worried. And like Mike, I would say that I'd be interested to hear what folks have to say, and I would be gathering as much information as I can for my neighbors about their feelings. I mean, it's not really always about, it's not about me, it's about representing my community. So
yeah, I think we didn't really do a good job of staying out in front of issues as they were starting to kind of crest. So I'm relieved that this committee exists so that we can try to make sure that we're staying on top of issues as they bubble up. Miriam?
Really quick too, the committee just voted on a revised charge. So that's going to come to the select board at some point, I think. Devin, does it have to come to the select board? Anyways, you might see it, but we just updated it based on where we are now as committee.
Great.
Super.
Well, if there are no more questions, we will move along. We won't be voting tonight, but thank you so much for your interest. We'll be in touch.
Thank you. Thank you for your time.
Great. Okay. So now we're revisiting some warrant articles. We must take up the budget amendments because I do think that we will at least get through the budget tonight. Fingers crossed. And we should try to at least get to the warrant article 12 because we have not taken a position yet on that, and we may get to it tomorrow night. Any?
We're supposed to do it on the 31st.
Oh, did that
Moderated,
get?
yeah.
Okay. I think I did see that, but oh my, so many emails. So, Melissa, do you want to update us with what's going on with the budget and what the advisory committee has done? And I've heard that there are a number of amendments.
Yes, so last Thursday was the deadline for the supplement mailing, and there were a few amendments that were filed as a result. On the budget, there is a motion from Scott Anadian and Kimberly Richardson looking to amend the recreation budget by adding $1.3 million to the recreation budget, and then amending the group health budget by adding $15,310. That is supplement number 2 under Article 8, if you're looking at your combined reports. So that is the first amendment. If you want me to walk through all of them, or if you want to take them individually, let me know how you'd like to try.
I think individually will be a lot less confusing.
Okay.
So why don't we have a brief discussion on that? I assume that it's aiming to do what, warrant article 26?
It's related to 26, funding for scholarship programs.
Okay, Mel?
Sure. So I just wanted to remind the board that as part of the ARPA first round of allocation, there was well, I'll call it a placeholder, but it was an action of this board that an additional $500,000 was added to an existing application of the Brookline Community Foundation for the support of scholarships and other tuition fees for recreational programs. That was the intent of that, and admittedly, it wasn't an original application by anyone, as far as I know, to the ARPA. So, really, at the last, sort of towards the last part of the process, we allocated $500,000 for that express purpose. The details have not been worked out by any means. We have had some discussions with the BCF to talk about how current scholarships and tuition reimbursements are handled, because there are some scholarships that are provided by the BCF. There are also the Recreation Department themselves allocates a modest amount from their revolving account that's covered by fees, the fee-based programs, to handle some scholarships, but their programs are limited because of frankly, the funding. And also, there's only so much participation in these programs you can do. They always are limited and have waiting lists. So there is some limitation. So I thought 500,000 was a good start, but granted, we haven't worked out the details. The $1,375,000, as I recall, was some calculation of the fact that there's 500 young people who would be eligible for summer camp, and summer camp cost $285 a week and it's for X weeks, and that came up. And and I may, perhaps neither number is really all that great, but the big difference between the two numbers is the one that I'm proposing is funded by federal grant, and what is being proposed to you this evening is being funded out of the town's tax levy, of which I don't have to tell you, I don't know where $1,300,000 would come at this point. We've spent the last several weeks trying to provide as much money as we could to the school department, much of which came from the federal grant too. So that's where I'm standing. I definitely oppose the budget amendment. I support the idea and believe the initial funding that was allocated in ARPA is a good start.
So thank you, Mel. That's my sentiment as well. This feels more like a ARPA proposal than something that should be used at town meeting, warrant article, or budget amendment. Miriam?
So I just want to back up what Mel is saying. I have a question for Melissa, which is first, if for some reason this passes, what happens to warrant article 26? You can answer that next, because I want to back up what Mel is saying is that I know we don't like the word earmark, but we have the $500,000 already approved money with BCF, and we are working with REC already on these issues with, and I hope Deborah's okay that I say this, with Deborah and Arthur and a few other people to get, because there is also a space and personnel issue that has to be addressed. All of that's already going on and happening. And so I feel like too, I think everyone knows this is really important to me. I think we have enough money to get this done with the 500,000 as is. But here's the thing, I'm going to push really, really, really hard that this gets to be a permanent piece of how REC does summer programs and other programs, right? Right now, this is a Band-Aid. But fair warning, as we move forward, I want this in the budget, right? So I'm actually probably going to vote against this only because I think we have a solution on hand. So.
Thank you very much, since I think this is directly related to ARPA, and there is a round two. I personally find it frustrating when people use the budget amendment process when they could be using the ARPA proposal process. And there were two bites of the apple specifically for, well, I didn't know about this process. John.
Thank you. Thank you to Scott and Kimberly who have submitted this. I'll say right up front, I disagree with the proposal. And I think there's just a couple of reasons worth highlighting. And Melissa will correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't see any reference to where the money would come from. In other words, this is not a proposal that says, and the funding to come from X, Y, or Z. So that sort of sets a bad precedent right there, in that just about every other, well, I would say every other part of this budget, we know where the money's coming from. I don't know where the money's coming from for this. And I think that's a strike against it. But then there's this question of timing, and I'll be the first to admit, there'll probably be the day when I feel like proposing an amendment from the floor of town meeting to a budget, and I'll regret having said this, but it isn't fair. It's not fair to the folks who survived, who ran the gauntlet that you have to run to get your proposals approved for funding, and that you have gone through the exercise of saying why this should be funded, but not that. Because at the end of the day, it always comes down to you've got to have your priorities set. And when you set your priorities, you are by definition saying we are going to elevate A, and unfortunately that means we won't have money for B. And then people get to say, do I agree with you based on A versus B? When a person comes in with an amendment such as this that has no identified source of funding, it also means they have no identified source of consequences. So if it turns out the funding would have to come from something else that we had already like vetted and agreed to do, they haven't had to defend, why we should do A and not B. So it just strikes me as, by its nature, it's kind of an unfair way to bring about a budget amendment. Thank you.
Any other comments? I saw that Deborah had raised her hand, so I told Devin to promote her. Deborah, this is not a public hearing. We've already had that, but you get 3 minutes.
All right, I'll be quick. Thank you. And Mel, thank you. To be totally honest with you, the budget amendment, and I had something to do perhaps with its crafting, was because we didn't know, and we had to get something in. And I'm perfectly happy to go back to the petitioners and declare victory. There's no reason for us to spend a whole lot of time on something if we have gotten to yes. So that's just, maybe I'm just one too many days of hay fever, but I think we can hit this and move on. Thank you, Mel. Thank you, Select Board. We're working on a process to figure out how to recruit kids now. That's fair. I'll put in a pitch for the rec people. They have really tried to roll up their sleeves and figure out how to accommodate as many kids as possible. And I think that there are other entities out there that should be rolling up their sleeves and helping the rec department as well. And more to come on that. So I guess I got 15 seconds left, and I will just say thank you again. We got victory. Let's just move on.
Great. Thank you so much, Deborah. Please work with Miriam and Mike for the round 2 ARPA, and we will do the very best that we can.
Well, honestly, I submitted 4 or 5 applications. So, it was kind of like somebody else needs to step up. And that's another piece of it. Other people need to step up.
Okay. So should we take a vote on this? I'm kind of hoping that no action is moved, but I don't want to be caught off guard if that doesn't happen. What do others think?
I'm fine with no action.
Yeah,
Okay.
no action definitely for me.
Okay. Hopefully I won't have to say the words because hopefully it will be, no action will be moved, but why don't we vote just in case? So on the.
Heather, you'd want to move reconsideration, and if there's no desire to move this amendment, I think you just want to stay where you are. And we can report that out though.
And we're going to have to move reconsideration if we vote on any of these supplement, right? Okay,
Correct.
so let's put a pin in that until we know exactly what we're going to be voting on, if we're going to vote on any of these budget amendments. Otherwise, we stay in our current position. So how many more are there?
Just two
Melissa?
more. Two more.
Okay.
The second amendment that is in your supplement mailing is supplement number 3, which was Marissa Vogt is the primary petitioner for this one. And essentially what it is looking to do is amend the special appropriation for rehabilitation of sidewalks and add $147,000 to that appropriation. Same issue with the prior amendment in that the funding source has not been identified to meet that additional funding.
So I'm gonna weigh in because I would be the queen of sidewalks if I could anoint myself. This is not the way to go about it. We worked very hard to get additional monies, to get an additional FTE traffic engineer monies for the Vision Zero and other traffic calming. I'm very proud of what we were able to accomplish given the budget constraints this year. This is just closing your eyes and trying to pin the tail on the donkey, in my opinion. Mike, you'll have to unmute.
Yes, I'm thinking along the same lines. The moderator ran what I thought was a very nice, very well put together PowerPoint presentation or webinar on how town meeting works about 2 weeks ago for a week and a half ago for new town meeting members. And a lot of town meeting members who have experience in town meeting were there as well. There were something like 75 people in total. And one of the things that was said at that time was if you make an amendment to the budget has to be balanced. If there's an amendment to spend more money on something, then there needs to be an offsetting amendment, an offsetting line item cut or line items cut in order to make sure that the budget stays balanced. That is a hard and fast principle of budgeting. It's terribly imprudent to simply say, well, let's toss another 147,000 or whatever it is at this and think it's going to come out of thin air. And no matter how good an idea it is, and it is a very good idea to do sidewalk repair and do as much as possible, to add money without cutting it off somewhere else is just not reasonable thing to do. And I hope the message gets across to anybody thinking of adding money to the budget. You also have to come up with where it will be subtracted or it just doesn't work.
It does half the job. It requires half the effort.
Well, it doesn't even require half the effort. There's no effort at all to saying I'd like to spend more money on X. The trouble is it takes some work to figure out where I'm not going to spend money on Y. And that it's honestly, that's lazy. It's not responsible.
Any other comments? I would be moving no action on this. Any objections to that? And I guess we don't have to really do anything if it's going to be no action. Is that correct, Melissa?
Correct.
Miriam?
I mean, for the record, I would support this, but if I'm the lone person, I mean, I realize everything that you're saying is true, but, you know, especially sitting on the Disabilities Commission, I guess I'm just saying for the record, I would support this amendment.
Well, I think we've done what the what's the word for it? The intent of this is by funding an FTE traffic engineer and the two other things, Vision Zero and I'm forgetting what the other thing is. But when you don't know what you're going to be cutting, it's just imprudent budgeting.
I think that's fair.
Yeah. Any other comments? Okay, so we'll put a pin in this one as well. Miriam, if you feel very strongly, we can of course vote on it so that you can be on the record. The other option is to notify the moderator that, you know, you wish to speak on that particular budget amendment. What's the last one, Melissa?
So the last one I'm actually going to call up because it's just easier to show you the language. This is an amendment, supplement number 4 in your combined reports, looking to change the Skyline Park special appropriation by adding restrictive language on how the money can be spent, essentially not allowing it to be spent for basically furtherance of refurbishing the existing plastic turf or installing new plastic turf at Skyline Park.
I have some thoughts, but I would like to hear from Miriam, who has school-age children.
Thank you. So, I mean, the best way to think about this, in my opinion, the way I think about it, is that Skyline is a de facto high school field, right? I challenge anyone to go to Skyline on a weekend and pretty much from 8 a.m. till 5 or 6 p.m., that field is in continuous use. And I just can't imagine where these kids will go there will be no place for them to play. And I say that because we live in New England, and all you have to do is get the automatic field updates for when the fields are closed to get yourself woken up every third day to know the fields are closed, right? So I also, frankly, I just don't think this is how we do this. I don't think one person and then a whole bunch of town meeting members get to make a decision that impacts the entire town in such a unilateral way that has such a huge impact on all the kids, K-8, high school. The amount of playing fields in Brookline is already so limited. Without Skyline as a regular usable field, we really impact what's happening to our kids. I think these decisions need to be made not by advocates. And this is actually a conversation Bernard and I were having. These are the kinds of decisions that need to be made by experts. We need to have a policy. I'm totally in support of that, but this is not how we do it. I really think this is a dangerous way to create town policy. And that's what this is. This is policy by budgeting.
Mike and then Bernard.
Yeah, I agree with Miriam. I was going to say this is an end run, an effort to basically put in place Article 24 without actually voting on Article 24. It's an effort to put it in through the budget. And I would say it's very disturbing to hear the whole, to read the discussion about Article 24 and turf, where you see repeated comments about the impact of artificial turf on water, when the Commonwealth of Massachusetts issued an 88-page report on the impact of PFAS on water and did not mention artificial turf at all in that report. And it's very disturbing to see the comments about kids being exposed in some way to a hazardous chemical when the level of risk is just vanishingly small. There's an argument to be made about the disposal of artificial turf and the production of artificial turf, but the so-called scientific arguments are just so full of holes. And I agree that we need to have some clarity from people who actually know what they're talking about around this, and that this kind of end run is not appropriate. It's not right.
Bernard. You'll have to unmute. Oh, you hit mute again.
Okay, come on, computer. Okay, what was I going to say? This is a difficult question because unfortunately we have a lot of very smart people in Brookline, and they have their expert opinions, and we have a dueling experts event here. And for those of us who are not scientists, it's difficult to sort of figure out what makes sense. But having said that, one thing that clearly doesn't make sense, it seems to me, and maybe I'm wrong on this, but is putting grass on top of a waste dump, a sealed waste dump. Now, I don't know, the engineering of waste dumps, but I can't imagine that you either can do that or that it's safe to do that. Unless the waste dump is covered by concrete, in which case the question of whether you can actually grow grass there is raised, with enough soil. But anyway, that's just my thought. We need to figure out before we even have this discussion, what are the implications of putting something like grass on top of a waste dump?
John.
Thank you very much. Thank you to my colleagues who have spoken. As the sole supporter of grass, it seems, on this board, although I don't want to presume Heather's our chair's position on this. Excuse me. I want to say a word on behalf of Paul Shea, and Paul, I apologize if I have mispronounced your last name, but he brings this to the town meeting tonight, I think, out of very solid concerns and for solid reasons. To my colleague, Mike Sandman, I hear you on the questions of whether there is hard science that weighs in without any qualification as to whether artificial turf poses possible problems from PFAS. But I have also heard the other side of that argument and their answers to the points that you raised. For example, yeah, the state report didn't specify artificial turf, but it didn't specify a lot of things. It did speak very clearly that Massachusetts needs to take a very hard look at PFAS and decide how to handle the public health risks. And the other point too is yes, the levels in artificial turf have been deemed to be very, very trivial, but guess what? There are those who say, and I respect them because they have their credentials, it's at a level of trillions of parts per million that there can actually be risks, or at least that we need to be concerned about risks. So I utterly respect the views of those from this board who have spoken tonight, but I don't want to leave the impression that the individual who's bringing this amendment to town meeting tonight is doing so, heedless of any science or heedless of the relative merits of turf versus grass when it comes to use. So I'm just going to say that much, and I'll leave it at that for now. Thanks.
Miriam, real quick, because I wanted to say something.
I just want to be really clear that I don't think anybody here is claiming that we should be rolling around on artificial turf and licking the plastic and, putting it in our backyards. It is a discussion of risks and benefits. And I think that's the real problem here, is that if we look at it without adequately weighing both the risks, which are heavily emphasized, and the benefits, which I think are not being as heavily emphasized, in my personal opinion, then we are not doing ourselves what we are supposed to be doing, which is weighing both of those things before we make decisions. For those of you on the town meeting listserv, we've got an excellent, well-written letter from the high school soccer team talking exactly about how the difference between the Skyline where they play and Cypress Field where the JV team plays, and how having those two contrasts, their playing experiences. So I really think we have to really carefully also emphasize the benefits of having kids having place to play. And I will say it, especially in this peri-pandemic age, right? We can't do more things at the risks of our children in a way without managing all of those. And the pandemic's a perfect example. Masks have a role and they have a downside. We have to make the decision. So I'm done. Thanks.
So that actually kind of tees up the point that I was planning on making, which is that everything is a risk calculation. I was co-chair of the Green Caucus. I certainly consider myself an environmentalist. Do I compost? No, mostly because I don't eat fresh food very often. But I didn't have a car for 12 years. So, we each do the thing that we believe has the most impact. I remember being privy to a conversation with someone who was upset that we did not go with a full renovation of the Driscoll School, and that we were planning on demolishing the entire school and building new. I saw it as a positive that we would get, 30 or 40% of the land, for play space. But this person saw us demolishing a building that, had carbon, right? So this was inefficient from her standpoint. But from my perspective, things have to work for their intended purpose. we shouldn't necessarily look at it as what is the most, environmental safest option, and then try to like make make the kids contour themselves to that. This needs to function as a school. This needs to function as a field. And then we work backwards to see, okay, is there a more natural alternative like coconut cork, something that we can do to make it less bad? But I mean, if we really want to go there, don't have kids. Like, one of the biggest things that you could do to save the environment, not reproduce. To be quite honest, don't drive, don't own a single family home and heat it for like the entire year. There are lots of things, a lot of individual choice that nobody seems to want to talk about. But this is a choice that we are making that really impact a lot of people, i.e. children, that are not having a voice at this table. Any other comments? Okay. Bernard.
Yeah. Again, getting back to the landfill, one of the things that happens at landfills, and I assume it happens at our landfill of the Skyline, is the release of carbon dioxide and methane into the air. And I think it'd be useful for us to get someone to tell us, whether that's the case at Skyline and, how we're dealing with that, because that does relate to the use of Skyline with artificial turf versus grass. So just throw that out. I'll ask someone before this comes up. But
any other comments? I know maybe this isn't the right analogy. The elephant in the room is the companion warrant article, which is to study this more. I'm inclined to support that, and I think we did as a board, because as I've been trying to catch up on a lot of the listserv back and forth, there is a lot of statements being dressed up as fact when I'm not sure that any of us really have all of the facts. So I think we all need to take a pause and stop trying to pass policy that's going to tie our hands until we go through that process. So I would be moving no action on this. Any comments about that? And I assume that means that we don't reconsider and we can just stay where we are on our budget motion. I'm really looking at Melissa.
Yeah, if none of these amendments are something that the board wants to consider, then you don't need to reopen.
Okay. John, did you want us to vote on this so that you could be on the record? You also have the
No.
option of signing up.
No, I'm fine with, we just, stay where we are.
Okay. I don't want to misrepresent anyone on the board if I say a statement to the effect of, we talked and we decided as a select board not to support any of these budget amendments.
It would be helpful, if you can make the distinction, not to say unanimous or,
Got it.
whatever. Yeah.
Okay. I will make sure that is clear. Okay, so we've gotten through warrant article 8. We do have a public hearing that was scheduled for 6 p.m. So I want to make sure that we get to that. And then I think we should revisit the remaining warrant articles that we can try to get through.
So I'm going to jump into the advisory committee meeting, and then I'll hopefully have an update for you when I get back.
Great. Thank you so much, Melissa. Okay, so this is a public hearing, and it is on the change of stock for J&Z Foods Corporation doing business as 6 Po Hot Pot.
Hello.
Hello.
Hello. Hi, my name is Zhongshu Zhao, and this is Wenxiang Zhao. And for now, we are applying for our liquor license amendment. We used to have 2 partners, and now we invite him come here, and he now has 20% of our shares. So we need to apply for this.
Got it. Okay, so this is step 1, and then the step 2 will be regarding the liquor license. Mel?
No, step 2. I don't
Okay.
believe so. I think this is authorizing a change in the liquor license to accommodate this new ownership a member. I
Got
don't
it.
know if it requires ABCC approval or not. I don't know, but this is the only step that the board will have to act upon.
Okay, any questions for the applicant? This seems pretty straightforward. Everything has been filed. If there are no questions, I will just move the language to be voted. Mel?
This is a public hearing.
Oh, right, this is a public hearing. Thank you very much for the reminder. Devin, do we have anybody that wishes to speak on this?
There are 6 attendees, and at this time, no one has used the hand raise or Q&A feature to indicate they'd like to make a comment.
Okay, I will close the public hearing and just give it a second in case there are any latecomers. But if I don't see any questions or comments, I will move the language to be voted. Okay. I will move approval of the application for the change of stock for J&Z Foods Corporation, doing business as Sixpo Hot Pot at 1353 Beacon Street.
Thank you.
All those in favor, Bernard,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Miriam,
Aye.
Mike,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
You too. Bye-bye.
Okay, well, we lost Melissa, so now I'm kind of flying a little blind. Should we take up warrant article 12, or should we skip to maybe something a little easier, like single-use plastic? Any?
I would say warrant article 22 and 25 are, somewhat similar.
Well, the only thing I would say is that it's possible, very unlikely, but possible that 12 could come up tonight. But unlikely, I would say.
And we voted on 24 already.
Okay, so let's take up 12 then. Mike, did you have a comment?
Well, I just want to say, since I'm the designated speaker for 12, I'm slightly nervous about going in without any close at all.
Okay.
We can deal with it. What we should do is make sure that we have enough time to deal with it tomorrow night, because it's going to take some conversation even amongst just the 5 of us.
Yeah, and we're not meeting before town meeting tomorrow. So I think this is our one and only shot.
I did post if you
Oh, did
need
you,
to.
Devin?
It's posted, yeah, it's posted.
Awesome.
We thought
Okay.
the first couple nights were necessary.
Yes, no, that is, thank you.
By the way, I may be wrong, but I thought the moderator said that she was going to schedule warrant article 12 for the 31st.
That's correct.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, all right, that's a relief.
Okay.
We should still deal with it tomorrow night.
I think Melissa is probably going to give us a report from advisory, and that might inform us a bit. But
okay.
If you think you don't need Melissa, why don't you move on to some of the other articles?
Right.
We still haven't voted on the Parks and Rec Article 26. I see Deborah Brown in the attendees. We did not have her company last week, so if Deborah feels comfortable giving us an update, I'm still a little confused as to where warrant article 26 stands. And yeah, just kind of where it stands, what it is hoping to accomplish. Oh, good. Okay. Thank you, Deborah.
Excuse me, y'all. So 26 is a bylaw to create a rubric and a mechanism for increasing how the Parks and Rec Commission develops programming. One, for people, but two, in particular, for disadvantaged people. What we have now is a program that's literally, even when you read the statute, or bylaw, disproportionately weighted toward fees and maintaining recreational facilities, not on the side of we're talking about a whole person. And so this bylaw, one, brings in the idea that Parks and Rec should be about the whole person. That we need a process or a mechanism to figure out how to make sure that we know that there's at least 1,000 children in Brookline who would qualify for park services or for rec services, simply because, our proposal is if you get free lunch, if you receive SNAP, if you live at BHA, if you live at Section 8, essentially you are poor. And there's nothing there. There's nothing really there. And a scholarship of 30% doesn't do it. The funding piece from the budget amendment gets us part of the way there. But we need a systemic approach. We need an approach that 2 years from now, 3 years from now, people will forget about. And that's why it's crafted as a bylaw versus, folks saying they simply wanted a policy. Well, the problem with a policy is people can accept it or reject it. You don't have that same luxury with a bylaw. The benefit of a bylaw is typically, even if there's not a financial resource that goes along with it, there is an intellectual capital that tends to follow it. Lastly, I found out about this issue last November, December, and I started raising the red flag that there's a problem. And the Rec Commission, and not the Rec Department, the Rec Commissioners spent more time saying why they couldn't do it than how do we get to yes. And if that's part of the structure of how the system works, then I'm even more certain that we need something to ensure. I like to call them Little Johnny and Little Bernadette. Little Johnny and Little Bernadette have an opportunity to learn to swim. Or Grandma Agnes and Uncle Phil have an opportunity to learn how to mindfully walk, and to be able to do it despite being poor. And we don't have that now. So that's what it's about. It's like, let's level the playing field, make things open for poor people. Let's put it in writing. Let's create a program that gets evaluated every 5 years. Let's do something for the people in this town. And I'm going to say one last thing, Heather. Parks and Rec is up to the task. Parks and Rec is up to the task, but they need something that's going to give them, I don't want to say cover, but the legal authority to do what they know they need to do. Because they can do it. Yeah, because we have talked. So thank you for hearing me out.
Okay. Thank you very much for, and I apologize for putting you on the spot. So that helped me get a little more clear. I want to hear from the other select board members. My understanding is that a lot of other bodies that are making recommendations to town meeting are opting to refer this back to the Parks and Rec Commission. Any comments, Miriam?
I said this last time when we discussed it, and I'm going to say it again, and it just continues to what I said before, which is, I just don't think the Park and Recs Commission is up to the task without us being really explicit and telling them this is something that has to be done. And I feel like, that's what this is. This is saying this is something that is a priority and we have to do it. So I'm going to support the petitioner's motion on warrant article 26. I just think that the time for sending it back to the commission is past. That's what I think, but that's my personal opinion.
John?
Well, I have more faith in the Park and Recreation Commission, apparently, than my colleague, and I don't feel comfortable using a town meeting bylaw to basically express dissatisfaction with how one particular department is handling one particular challenge. We have a Park and Recreation Commission for a reason, and that is to, through the select board, which are 5 officials who have to face re-election on a every 3 years basis, appoint individuals that we entrust with listening to the public, responding to the public, and developing programs that meet the needs of the public. And if they are not doing it, we need to, as a select board, get specific information as to, on what basis are people saying they're not doing it? Is it because they, as a board, unanimously reject doing it? Is it because there's 1 or 2 members who keep pushing back against doing it? But the way to resolve these issues is, first of all, to go to the Park and Rec Commission, which it sounds like this petitioner has done, and I respect that. But I've also heard the petitioner say, the Park and Rec is ready to do this. That's great. I don't agree with the philosophy that if they're ready to do it, they're suddenly going to relax and back off just because we don't pass a bylaw turning town meeting into a de facto Park and Rec Commission that has decided that it knows better than the Park and Rec Commission what the priorities of the Park and Rec Commission should be. I'm never comfortable with that approach to managing our affairs as a town. I think we have to, if we're going to appoint people, recruit people to the Park and Rec Commission, we have to do it right. And then we have to deal with them and respect them and their ability to handle these concerns and these questions and to respond to these concerns and questions. But if they're not, we then have to do some work as a select board. The answer is not to then turn to town meeting and say, would you please pass a bylaw to give this Park and Rec Commission a kick in the seat of the pants because we can't seem to get them to do what we want them to do. That's not going to be a successful way of managing the affairs of the town, as far as I'm concerned. Thanks.
Mike?
This really, in a way, this goes back to the point that I made about having priorities or looking at priorities and how they change over time. Because I think that several years ago, this is the sort of thing that really wouldn't have risen to the level of a priority. We wouldn't be thinking about it very much. And I don't know that anybody would have brought it forward. And personally, I have no problem at all telling a commission or really forcing a commission to look at and respond to the new priorities that have come forward from the community at large. That's, if they're not able to do it themselves, then they have to, then they need instruction. I'm not comfortable with the idea of doing this in a bylaw, I think that is attacking things with a jackhammer when really a good hard shove would have been sufficient. On the one hand, on the other hand, that's what we have is either send this back to the commission, which hasn't done anything with it thus far as we can tell, or putting in a bylaw that used the jackhammer. And I'm going to vote with the jackhammer this time.
Okay, thank you, Michael. So we've got 4 minutes before we lose big. I want to say something, and then I would like us to vote. Bernard, you have 1 minute.
Yeah, very quickly. Do we have any evidence that the Park and Recreation Commission is not up to the task? And have we really, tested that out? I'm inclined to vote with the advisory committee. I think CTO has to refer this back to the Park and Recreation Commission. I mean, it's clear what they're expected to do, and I have no reason to think that they won't.
So I agree, and I want to explain why. So I will probably be moving a referral to Parks and Recreation. This circumstance really reminds me of a similar circumstance that we took up a couple years ago with the CDICR bylaw, and we passed something and codified it in a bylaw, and then we've missed deadlines to create what we were supposed to create, which was a vehicle to investigate complaints. I think we need to recognize that we need to build in flexibility for these volunteer boards and commissions. And the select board appoints this commission. So if this is a priority, we need to appoint commissioners who reflect that priority. But to do it this way, I'm not completely convinced is the right way to go right now. So I will be moving referral back to the Parks and Rec Commission. Any comments before I call the roll? Mike?
Yeah, I'm looking at an email from Sandy Gadsby. He's forwarded to town meeting members an email from Scott Ananian to the effect that the agreement with the warrant article 26 petitioners was reached tonight. In any case, WA 26 petitioners have agreed to move forward with the ARPA funds at this time and not request additional funds. So I'll not be moving this amendment. So to the extent that that plays into this, wanted us all to know it.
Okay, thank you very much. All those in favor of referring warrant article 26 to Parks and Rec, say aye. Bernard?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Miriam?
Oops, sorry. Opposed.
Mike?
Nay, opposed.
And the chair votes aye. Thank you very much, Deborah, and good luck at town meeting. So that, I think, is going to be the conclusion of everything that we can get to this evening while we still have big, since they have a big night ahead of them tonight. Any parting words? See you at town meeting?
Well,
You in a half an hour?
I have a question, if it's all right.
Of course.
Melissa has, I think, had just now sent an email. There has been some discussion as to the speaker list and the speaker for the article that we just voted on. And I think Melissa needs to know who the speaker would be. I think I'm on the list currently as the speaker, and I would be happy to defer to anyone else who would prefer to be the speaker. I just don't know if it should be someone who was, on the no side of the vote we just took. So
customarily, someone from the select board who was on the majority side speaks for the select board at town meeting.
And as I say, I'm happy to do that.
Okay.
So shall we
Uh,
tell Melissa that the list stays the same?
Yes, unless we move reconsideration for whatever reason between now and then.
Okay.
Okay. We really do need to let Big go. So thank you all and see you tonight.
See you soon.